Dear President, dear professors, dear all participants of our meeting, it's a great honor for me to participate in this seminar on BRICS in company of so many distinguished researchers from all around the world. The importance of the topic of this meeting is confirmed by the rapidly changing international reality. I would like to express my special thanks to Professor Rastbin and Professor Dwensky for their positive feedback to my initiative to organize the seminar and to everyone who accepted my invitation. Now, let's jump to my intervention. In order to fully understand the role of BRICS countries in transforming the world order towards multipolarity, it is necessary to place it in the broader context of international competition, identifying different levels of influence according to the strength of the links between the actors involved. I have used ideal types to compare the actors of the new and old eras of international relations. I will present a multi-level model that will highlight the importance of the BRICS, which are tools not formalized and operating on a voluntary basis, except a real influence on direction of change in the 21st century. From a long-term perspective, the old era is a period in which Western powers dominated during the hegemonic cycles of the last 500 years, culminating in American hegemony. Its result is the emergence of global multi-crises: raw materials, food, energy, transport, health, and the environment. At the last BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro in 2025, President Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, pointed out that the world is in a deep structural crisis. International law had become a dead letter, as had the peaceful resolution of disputes. In addition to an unprecedented number of conflicts since World War II, progress is threatened by neglect of the climate system, trade wars, attacks on the global healthcare system, intellectual property laws restricting access to medicines, and finally the fear of nuclear catastrophe. Neocolonialism means that foreign capital is used to exploit nations, which is why emancipations emphasize economic independence and diversification of the economy. President Lula said that the essence of neocolonialism is the reverse Marshall Plan, implemented for decades by International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, under which emerging and developing economies essentially finance the centers of Western capitalism. International aid flows have declined, while the debt cost of the poorest countries have skyrocketed. The neoliberal model only exacerbates inequalities. For example, 3,000 billionaires have earned a combined $6.5 trillion since 2015. To quote President Lula da Silva. It is worth to remark that the theme of the 14th BRICS summit in China in 2022 was strengthening the high-quality BRICS partnership, entering a new era of global development, as it reveals the direction of the group evolution in the second decade of the 21st century. During the summit in Durban in 2023, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa stated, I quote, "BRICS is an equal partnership of countries that have different views but a shared vision of better world. Therefore, BRICS can essentially be characterized as an inter-civilizational association of countries for new era. The world has changed. We don't need an emperor. We are sovereign nations." These words from the Brazilian leader can be considered the essence of the new era paradigm. And let's back to a picture which is here on the TV screen, which is a description of this model division of actors of new and old era. So at the basis we see, excuse me, at the basis we see competition between United States and China's People's Republic of China, which the Graham Allison described using the category of took it the strap. A weakening hegemon provokes warfare out of fear of collapse at the hands of a new power. Allison described that of 16 historical examples, the author proves that only 4 did not end in the hegemonic war. With its ability to impose its interest warning, the US changed its methods of conducting great power politics by updating. Of course, I talk about the Donald Trump era of ruling of United States. During his presidency, we can see the updating the 1973 concept of American historian Frederick Jackson Turner based on the rhetorical figure of dynamic frontier. The key to bringing civilization here is to tame space, expand the so-called free land, and wrest it from the hands of barbarians. A manifestation of this geostrategic change is the cancellation of the model of empire as a deterritorialized vehicle of individual freedom, liberal democracy, human rights, and the global market in favor of territorially rooted imperialism and the superior rights of American citizens with a specific identity. Instead of global information network and institutional governance, classical expressionism is developing, promoting spheres of influence and thus updating the principles of classical geopolitics from the turn of the 19th and the 20th centuries or later 30s of offensive realism in international relations. Examples of these processes including open demands to annex Canada, attempts to take over Greenland, establish control over the Panama Canal, change the name from the Gulf of Mexico of the Gulf of America, attack on Iran, supporting of Israel, now threats against Nigeria, and sending the Navy to put pressure on Venezuela. The goal of the new geostrategy, of American geostrategy, is to weaken China, which is rightly considered the most significant threat to American dominance, including the disintegration of BRICS. Hence, the threat of imposing 100% tariff if a new currency is created that threatens to weaken the dollar, accompanied by the narrative of death of BRICS by Trump. To decide to pull India away, to departure from a confrontational stance toward Russia, the imposition of sanctions on South Africa, pressure on Brazil, and attempts to keep Saudi Arabia on its side. But at the effect, new American geostrategy, emphasizing the pursuit of national interest and pragmatism in asserting opportunities and threats, allies and adversaries alike reject the messianic vision of the United States as a savior, and in the fact, the policeman. And Secretary Rubio said, it is not normal for the world to have only one pole of power. It was an anomaly, it was the result of the end of the Cold War, but ultimately we will return to a multipolar world. We are seeing this now in China and to some extent in Russia. So it is the basis of rivalization between model of so-called at the left old era actors and at the right new era. At the next level we see the geostrategical blocks. Geostrategic rivalry based on alliance becomes apparent. The Anglo-Saxon heartland, which I remarked the words of Professor Kees van der Pijl, which would gave his speech later. The so-called Five Eyes alliance, comprising the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, are involved in defending American hegemony. 3 of them have formalized their ties by creating AUKUS in 2021. To which they are attracting the other 2 as well as Japan. And at this level, the counter-threat is expressed by the emerging Russia, China, Iran, North Korea axis formed during the Russian-Ukrainian war, which can be called the Eurasianic bloc, sometimes referred to as a CRING, as confirmed by the report from US Defense Intelligence Agency. According to the report, the United States is facing a new international sub-coalition in which each actor closes its own area instead of creating a hierarchy, a decentralized interdependence that could undermine the foundation of the unipolar world. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea do not form a formal bloc, but a network system with distribution of functions. China legitimized this diplomatically and visually, but avoids open arms supplies. Iran supplies drones and will exchange technologies. North Korea is the main supplier of artillery and manpower, supporting, of course, Russia during this war. According to the DIA, Moscow is not building a union around itself, but a diversified logistic and technology chain. However, in contrary of the description of this report, we can observe that alliance ties in Greek are formed on the basis of various legal forms. The Treaty of Mutual Assistance and Cooperation between China and North Korea, now in 2025 between North Korea and Moscow, comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new era between China and Russia, supporting of Iran, and many others which would be described in my article. Because of lack of time, I don't have time to describe this very concretely. But look at latest information. After Russia and China began selling modern weapons to Iran after the end of war in Iran-Israel war in June 2025, and he joined later few weeks ago to the United Nations, Iran, China and Russia have also opposed Europe's attempt to impose sanctions on Tehran as legally unfounded and politically harmful. These strategic ties are a manifestation of the power of the three countries that belong to BRICS. Yes, only North Korea doesn't belong to BRICS, but three others are the part of BRICS now. At the third level, we see the NATO from the left, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a part of the model of new era. And of course, NATO, which forms the foundation of the power projections capitalists of the collective West bloc of states, is the collective participation in international relations. But with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the loss of its legitimacy sought a new one at the beginning of 21st century. It became part of American geostrategic code of the war on terror, now replaced by the rules-based order. The alliance potential was strengthened by the admission of Sweden and Finland in 2003-2004, while still emphasizing the need for further expansion towards Ukraine and Georgia. And in terms of defense spending, it appears to be the strongest military bloc. But NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says the West is not ready for what awaits in 4 to 5 years, calling for a shift to war mode and increased production and defense spending. The justification is that Russia, China, North Korea and Iran are trying, let me remark, Rutte trying to weaken North America and Europe and transform the global order. But when we observe the effects of the NATO summit in Hague, there was minimalist in form and content. The main element of this is the increase of defense spending with a new target of 5% of GDP. And opposite sides is built by Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which was formalized as an intergovernmental international organizations in 2021. In addition to synchronization in terms of expansion, there is also growing convergence between Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS in terms of membership in the core and partnership belt. The current stage, 4 members of the BRICS core, India, Iran, China and Russia, are also members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The core of BRICS currently also includes 2 dialogue partners from Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. The newly created BRICS partnership belt also included 2 Shanghai Cooperation Organization core members from Central Asia, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and 1 core member from Europe, namely Belarus. In addition, some core participants of Shanghai Cooperation Organizations and partner economies have been granted membership in the new development bank of BRICS in recent years, notably Uzbekistan and Bangladesh, which has applied for Shanghai Cooperation Dialogue Partner and observes. With the expansion of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the bloc launched a new format in 2024, and as we observe the development of this organization, it can show the way how to develop also institutionalization of BRICS. An important aspect which isn't present in BRICS but in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is category of indivisible security community. And of course, another important aspect which gather these two formal and informal organization of new era is the promoting of building new Shanghai Cooperation Bank, which are also help to develop the global south infrastructure and would be a part of alternative building of alternative institutions, those of control by the West. And the final level of confrontation between old and new era models involves informal institutions with real goals. And that's why I put the BRICS at the same level as G7. Because I don't think it's methodologically correct to put BRICS at the same level as NATO. Because they are different kind of activities. That's why that is the reason I prepared those models. And G7 brings together the centers of capitalist West, of course. The main goals of this format was maintain the purchasing power of the key currencies of the capitalist economy. Of course, there was Russia was part of it during the time of Yeltsin, that Russia wanted to be periphery of the West and was dominated by the oligarchic elites. After, of course, the crisis in the Ukraine, the West suspended Russia from G8, and in 2017 Moscow left the group. Now we can have that they want United States promote the back Russia and G8, but I think it is irrational attitude. But let's look at the newest of G7 activities. In order to counter the appeal of China Belt and Road Initiative, it was within the G7 that the Build Back Better World project was proposed, arguing that the private capital would provide developing countries with 40 billion in aid, as an alternative of proposition which came from, of course, China's initiatives, the Belt and Road initiatives. And let's jump to the description of military situation between Iran and in Israel. In the G7 stated that the G7 leaders reaffirm our commitment to peace and stability in the Middle East. In this context, we affirm Israel's right to self-defense. We affirm our support for Israel's security. And that is the clear difference between G7 and BRICS as a part of this old and new era model, which I have described. So, at the end of my speech, I want to highlight on this. You have this on the screen that. For me, from my perspective, which is the effect of this kind of analysis, which are part of book focus on BRICS, which I have now finished to write. The finiki is always not so fun, but I put on the screen the difference between paradigm of old era actors and new era actors. And of course, when we describe each actor or in international relations, I think we can position each country closer or farthest from the one of two ideal types. So the paradigm of international relations of old era, basic assumption is exclusive. New era, inclusivism. That's why so many actors want to participate in BRICS, and there are more and more. When it comes to ideas on international governance, old era based on this kind of this well-known description as jungle versus gardens, the West versus the rest, value-based order. New era, but dialogue between civilization and mutual learning, no enemy figure, order based on mutual recognition of subjectivity, no mentorism. When it comes to economy, old era means global capitalism in the interest of private corporations without social responsibility. We have heard from the last 30 years the narration of freedom, but without responsibility. When it comes to new era, this is adopting the economy to social development regulated by sovereign national states. When it comes to security, old era closed based on block mentality, new era open, indivisible, as it was described especially in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but it's also supported by BRICS. When it comes to political system, old era means promoting liberal democracy, legitimizing social inequalities. New era, locally contextualized, but focus on the social development. And last but not least, of course, building of different mentality based on different approach of science. Old era scientism, positivism, analytical attitude, and new era organicity, holism, and taking into account values in developing the society. So this is, I think, proposition of model of description the processes of changing world order nowadays. In the speech of Professor Ali Rastbin, at the finish, it was also highlighted that now we observe the new era, and I think that that it is a good analytical model to show how each block, state, and actor, where is he now in this objective transformation of world order. Thank you very much for your attention.